In this unit, we're talking about learned behaviors and stereotyped behaviors. So, a stereotyped behavior is one that is instinctive. It's performed in the same way throughout the individuals of a species, and it's done in response to a stimulus. So several examples are directional taxis, a speed change such as kinesis, a reflex, which is an automatic movement of a body part, and a fixed action pattern, which is a more complex series of behaviors. A fixed action pattern is a behavioral sequence that continues even when a stimulus is removed. So examples of this are courtship behaviors, feeding young, and circadian rhythms. So this male stork here is performing a courtship dance, and he will continue to do that from the beginning to the end, even if the female that he was courting has left the scene. Learned behaviors are different in that they're not instinctive, they have to be seen and practiced by the individual, and they can be stopped in the middle, unlike an FAP. They're also based on life experience. So this tiger cub here will learn a great deal from his mother before he grows up and leaves her. And so this is an example of learned behaviors. Conditioning is a behavioral response to one stimulus that is then applied to a different stimulus. So Pavlov's famous experiments with dogs show examples of conditioned behavior. He would supply the dogs with food, and they would drool when they smelled it. Pavlov then started to ring a bell when he presented the food to the dogs, and later the dogs would start to drool when they heard the bell ring, whether there was food presented or not. So that's an example of a conditioned behavior. Habituation is a response that decreases with exposure to a stimulus if no positive or negative result happens. So the response decreases if the animal gets no response from it. So an example of that is seen with my kitten picture here. A cat cries at night for attention. If you ignore the cat doesn't do anything, doesn't get anything from you, either good or bad. Eventually, the cat will habituate and will stop crying at night. Imprinting is an attachment to another animal or an object during a critical period, and usually this is shortly after birth or hatching. So one example is crane hatchlings that see a person after they've hatched, and they, instead of seeing another crane. And so the hatchlings then imprint on the person and follow the person around and learn from the person instead of learning from a crane parent. This has been very important in the rehabilitation and maintenance of survival programs for endangered whooping cranes. People dress as though they're cranes when the cranes are young, immediately after they hatch, so that the cranes will think that they're cranes instead of thinking that they're people, which is one thing that they do when they imprint on something that is not a fellow bird. So check your supplementary readings for more information about social learning and imprinting and stereotyped learning behaviors.